So we are currently at the stage where the clay is still pretty wet, but we've let it dry to a certain point so that we could actually coil it around on itself. And we spent some time attaching this, and then we put the Band-Aid coil on the outside and did a little bit of paddling. There's still a seam on the inside that you can kind of see. So I could take a tool and I could put it in there and I could kind of clean that up if I want to. But I probably won't at the moment because I feel like it's pretty secure on the outside. And this is a bottle form that I'm going to be kind of closing off with a small neck. So I will never see the inside of this bottle unless I break it open. So I'm just going to be putting some notes inside this bottle. That's all I'm going to be putting in there. Maybe some other like ephemera, that I can shove into the neck. So what do I do with it next? What do I do now? Well, now I'm going to be building up a coil neck or like shoulders and then the top of the bottle. And I'm probably going to be changing the shape of this bottle because right now it's just really plain looking to me. It looks kind of like a wine bottle, and if I built up a shoulder and a neck, I don't really want it to look like a wine bottle. I want it to have more character to it. And so now you have to start thinking about, well, what are some of the things that I wanted to put on the outside of it? And what is my form really saying about my meaning? So I haven't really talked about this yet, but the meaning, the message I want to put in this bottle is really a kind of a message of love. And I know it sounds a little bit cheesy, but I just want people to know in the future that the only way out of all of this struggle and this strife and this fighting is through love and empathy and understanding that we're all different, but that doesn't mean that someone is different from you, that someone is negative or bad or at heart a horrible person and someone we should be fighting with. So I kind of want to write a letter and send a message of solidarity and unity. And I'm assuming that anyone who gets this message will appreciate, I'm hoping that they will appreciate it, or maybe it's something that they need to hear or something they need to work on in their life a little bit. So my message for the bottle is going to be pretty generic because I can't put too much in there, right? It's not like a time capsule. So that being said, I'm probably going to be putting maybe some text on the outside, kind of like Grace and Perry, and some images of maybe unity, and I haven't quite figured out what those are going to be yet. And I could use some of this texture, or I could smooth it out and I could, carve into it and do other things. So for now, I just want to deal with the form. So the first thing I think I'm going to do is change the form. So I'm going to get the body of this a little bit wet, and I'm going to let it sink in for a minute or two, and then I'm going to paddle it into a different form. And you can, if you don't have a ceramic paddle, you can use anything really that is hard in your space. You can hit it with anything. So I'm going to let that water seep in just for a second. And while that's happening, I'm going to roll out some coils because I need to put some coils on the top. You know what else you can do at this stage too is if you don't want it to be tall and skinny, you can actually roll out some more slabs or take a extra slab and you can cut into it and you can add form to it, which actually I might do just so you guys can see how to do it in case you're curious. So like if I wanted maybe the bottom part or the top part of my bottle to be wider, I could make that happen. If I wanted to have some geometric elements to it, I can make that happen. I have this slab that I rolled out for another demo that I'm not going to use for a bottle, so I think I'm going to use this to add some more form. I think I need to get it a little bit wet. It's not quite bendable at the moment. Just a little bit of water saturation and it surely will be. Let that sit for a second and maybe do a little sketch. Because this is a new idea. This is actually not one that I sketched out yet. So I might need to brainstorm it a little bit and figure out, well, what am I going to do? Well, I think I want the base, the bottom of it, to be the way it is. I don't want to change that too much. But maybe I could have some like fun little flared out pieces on the side. So I could cut out like kind of like a shape like this that I can fold, and then I would attach this side here and the side here, so the side of my form kind of like flares out, kind of like the sides of a cobra. I don't know why that came to mind, but like, you know, here's the tongue and the eyes like the sides of a cobra when it gets on the defense. And then I could bring the neck up and do something fun here. Maybe it flares out a little bit, and then maybe there's a really big opening right there. So it doesn't have to look like a wine bottle. In fact, I would encourage you to try to play around with the form a little bit. So this is sort of my kind of fun form. It almost looks like a figure in a way. So to do that, I'm going to have to cut out some darts here. So let me find a good angle. When you guys are in the classroom, you're going to be still kind of watching this from my demo table, but like projected up on the screen instead, because you know how I used to do. I really miss the good old days where we did demos where you guys just kind of piled around me and I worked in the middle of the room, but we can't do that when you guys come back. So I'm going to be continuing to demonstrate right here and projecting what I do up on the screen, and of course you can watch me in person from your tables. So this part I kind of smoothed out, so I think I'm going to go to the sides here, and I'll cut these pieces out first before I cut out my negative space. I'm just kind of free forming this here. Let's see what I'm doing. And I'm going to cut one out, and then I'll use that as a template for the second one. I could roll this out a little thinner if I wanted to. I haven't decided yet. This is why it's good to have extra slab sometimes, extra wet slab, or extra slab that is drying at the same rate as what you're making. Which is why I'm going to save these extra pieces here. Okay, so now I have these really cool pieces, and I can use them to measure out where I need to cut. So the next step I'm going to do is maybe take some type of edge, hard edge, and I'm going to put a crease down the middle of this. I'm just improvising here, you guys. This is fun. Okay, so I'm putting a crease down the middle so that I can fold it without breaking it. I'm going to make that kind of fun flared out. I could even change the rigidity of it. Right now it's very geometric. I could kind of go in and like push out, give it a little bit of organic form to it. If you get a little cracking, that's okay. That's the nature of the slab. You're just going to score that and smooth it out, or put a little wet clay in there. If it cracks too much, of course it's going to open up, but a little tiny little bit is going to be fine. Okay, so I'm just putting a little curve in this. Kind of looks like a leaf. And then I'm going to be using that to give this a different form. And before I cut out, I'm going to make both of these happen. Clay takes time. You really have to babysit these pieces too, because we're going to be working on them for a while, and they have to stay in a workable state for a good couple weeks. So babysit, babysit, babysit. This piece is a little wetter than the other one was. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing you as an option. It has to be around the same size, no bigger than 12 inches, but no smaller than 6, I think is what I said. You know, I don't want tiny little. This is your opportunity to work a little bigger, you guys. I don't want you to make a little tiny little bottle like that. Okay, you're not going to learn any of these techniques if you're making work that's that small. I will ask you to start over if that's what you end up doing, okay? So no smaller than 6, no bigger than 12. Miss Grenadier's cracking down today. all in love and support, right? I want you guys to learn these things and be proud of your pieces, okay? That's why I'm being stricter. All right, so now I've got this vertical bottle form, and I want to put these wings on it. So I have to get them lined up to where I want them to go first. Just going to kind of stick it for a second. Make sure it's where I want it to be, and then I'll cut out and attach. Yeah, I already like it better, and I'm not even close to being done with it. These slabs are still pretty wet. You can see that they're kind of moving around. Okay, so that is where I want them to be. So now I'm going to do one at a time here, and I'm just going to trace. I'm going to trace, and then I'm going to cut it in a different spot than where I'm tracing, because I need to make sure I have clay to attach it to. So I've traced that, but I'm going to actually cut in about 1/4 of an inch on the inside of that trace line, so that I'm actually attaching the clay to something. I'm going to do one at a time so that I don't hurt the structure of my bottle. Okay, so now I have this negative space cut out, and I have to find a way to attach this to it. So the best way to attach 2 slabs together is to have them be kind of beveled towards each other. So I think I'm going to take a knife tool or a needle tool or a butter knife, and I'm going to go along the edge of this here, and I'm going to bevel this edge. So that means I'm kind of cutting the edge here at an angle so that there's more surface area that is touching your form here. It'll make for a better attachment. And you can also bevel this a little bit too. Your score tool, and because these are slabs that have dried a bit, you have to score extra deep and attach really, really well. Crosshatch scoring on both sides. Maybe a little bit more on the top and the bottom. Sponge. And then line it up before you attach. Make sure it's where you want it to be. Okay, so now it's kind of where I want it to be. I'm going to go around and I'm going to compress. So I'm pinching at the seam here, making sure that those are really lined up. Now I can kind of get my hand down inside because there's more negative space on the inside, so that's going to help me attach this. And you're sort of attaching it the same way that you did when you closed your form here. So this is really kind of like leather hard, semi-leather hard attaching technique here. How do I change my form? How do I expand on my form? How do I manipulate my form? The more you try these new things, the better you're going to get at all of this. You're going to be like, oh, I tried that with this one. I'm going to try it with this new technique. So because I can get my hand on the inside of this, it's a good idea to go in and physically attach the inside just so that you don't have any cracks. Scraping. I can't even really see what I'm doing down there, but I can feel where the seam is. Okay, and then I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to really scrape that seam closed. And I'm probably going to put a Band-Aid coil there too, just for extra support. See how I scored it already? It's already thinking ahead. Put a Band-Aid there. Especially up here. I could use this little point as a shoulder, part of my shoulder, so I could curve it around. Okay, I'm going to take some wet clay and make a Band-Aid. Does anyone have any questions so far about their form, their building technique? Any struggles you're having? Okay, so I'm putting my Band-Aid coil on there and I'm going to wrap it around and kind of feed it into the inside here. I'm going to squish it down there. My hand is a counter pressure on the inside. Compression is the key, especially in those seams. I'm going to use my finger to smooth it out, and then I'll attack it with my rib tool. And of course the paddle. Rib tool and the paddle are essential things for anything I build. Fork, rib tool, paddle, knife. Okay, Band-Aid. I don't really need a Band-Aid on the inside. As long as I seal up that seam, it should be fine. And my coil can be skinnier. That last one was a little bit big. Of course, the more complicated you make your form, the more work it's going to be, but that should not be a deterrence. It should be something that gets you kind of like more into your project, because you're going to be proud of the form that you make, because it will probably be something you've never made before. I'm already, seeing some resistance from students to let go of your pieces. This is probably going to be one of the hardest things about this project is, yes, you have to either bury this or send it out into the world. And yes, you should care about the way it turns out. Maybe even more so than if you were to keep it yourself, because you're giving it away as a gift to someone. Just imagine how cool that would be to find this beautifully made bottle in the sand with a message. It's going to feel like fate. It's going to feel like, God, this message was meant for me. And you're going to give that experience to someone by sending it out into the world. You just keep it in your room for yourself. And I'm not just talking about one person I've spoken to, so don't feel like I'm singling you out, because there's several people have already told me, I'm going to keep it. And That's not part of the project. Part of the project is to give this to your community somehow as a message, or your future self, one or the other. Okay, so see how much that's changed the form. It's not exactly where I want it to be yet, but now all of a sudden it's bigger. I could get those wing shapes back with a little manipulation, but right now I'm just trying to attach this thing. So I have more to work with here. I feel super clunky right now, but that's okay. Still working with it. Really satisfying to cut into a wet slab of clay like that and pull it away. Bevel my edges. So all your teachers just got microphones. So we're going to be wearing microphones so that you guys can hopefully hear us okay when we're wearing our masks. So that is something we were concerned about, is you guys actually being able to hear us teaching and projecting if we had a mask on. So we're going to be masked and mic'd. This is starting to feel more and more like I'm on a TV show every day. Okay. Score, score, score. Okay, so I'm going to attach this wing here. Get it in the place you want it before you attach. Yeah, if you guys are coming back as a hybrid learner, you will be bringing your sculptures into school, and you're going to be leaving them here and working on them here. Basically, I think if you're on almost any arts class, I don't know how Mr. Vetter is going to do it, but if you're in any of my other arts classes, then you will be doing all your studio work while you're on campus and all your computer work while you're off campus, so that we can optimize the time we have together in the room. Oh, this opened up. I have to fix that. Now, as you're working with these slabs, if they start to dry out and they start to get kind of cracky on you, compress and rehydrate a little bit. But the worst thing you could do to a cracking slab is to dump a bunch of water on it, because that water is just going to make those clay particles separate and break open even more. Okay, wet coils. And then I'm going to do some paddling and I'm going to build the neck. I don't know if I'll have time to work on the capsule today. I'll try, but I'm kind of, sometimes when you start something and you have to leave it in a finished state so that you can carry on the next time you work. So that's how I'm feeling about this bottle right now. I feel like I need to get the whole thing built today in order for it to be stabilized in its wet state. That's my goal, is to get the neck at least roughly built. And paddle it into a form that I like. Okay, this is where the rib tool comes in handy. I'm going to take all of this attached clay and I'm just going to scrape it and compress it, form it. I lost all my press texture because I decided to add more clay, but that is okay. I can always press it back in if I like it. And I'm just trying to make these pieces all one piece. And then get the form that I'm really looking for. Now that I have that extra clay on there, I can start to manipulate it a little bit more. Don't neglect the base. People are gonna see the bottom of your piece. Pick it up once in a while and tend to it. Okay, so I need to make sure the inside is really where I want it to be too before I close it off. Okay, so before I do, well, I like those cobra wings. I like that idea, and I kind of lost that a little bit. So I'm going to work on that just by paddling. This is the fun part because this is where your form really kind of emerges. Push it out from the inside, scrape it. I want to do all this forming before I close it off because once I close it off, I can't get my hand on the inside anymore. Look at it from all sides. I'm using this part of the paddle to kind of give an indent. Because now it's not cylindrical anymore. It definitely has its own character. I think I am going to cut these wings off so I can get a nice coil around the top instead of dealing with those. I'm going to really clean this up. You might be saying, well, I don't want my piece to have this rib texture on it. Well, don't worry about that. The rib texture, the teeth on your rib, even if you're using these plastic ones, are meant to move the clay. They're not meant to be the finished texture. So don't be shy in using them. They're really helpful. They help you move the clay and scrape and kind of get it where you want it to be. Remember, when you're pushing on the outside, try to counter pressure on the inside. It's the same for when you're throwing on the wheel, right? You have to have your hand on the inside, because if you just pushed on the outside, your piece is just going to cave in on itself. It's the same concept when you're hand building. Okay. So you can kind of see how it sort of evolved into this sort of like weird oblong shape with the little dents on the side here. I still think it needs a little paddle work. Accentuate that a little bit more. These are the things you have to do before it dries too much, or it will crack on you if you try to do this. If this were any drier, I would not be able to do this. It would just break. So starting pretty soon, maybe even next class period, we are going to be doing some breakout rooms where we share with each other our forms and any challenges we might have. So we're going to be doing that soon. The purpose of that really is to help, connect with your peers and get some help and suggestions, advice. And I'm thinking I might mix up Ceramics 1 and 2 students so that Ceramics 2 students can help you guys a little bit, be your mentors. Or maybe Ceramics 1 students can mentor you if you're struggling too. It goes both ways. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that for now. I might even go in with a smooth rib tool, and I'll do that later. Okay, so now how do I build up the top? So first thing I need to do is clear out my workspace a bit, because I've got a crazy mess here with lots of little shavings, and I don't want all these bits to be in my coils. So I'm going to get rid of those. And I might keep these. I don't know if I'll use them, but it doesn't hurt to keep them hydrated. I'm going to waste the clay. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is wet this top part, because I really need it to be nice and moist for adding more clay. And I'm going to go back to my drawing. I'm going to see, what do I really want it to do? Well, this form is different. It turned out different than what I was thinking it was going to look like, but that's okay. I'm happy with it. Maybe I could go in and do a little forming right here. Just give it a little character, like a little foot on the side. This is the purpose of your drawings, is to remind you of your idea. Like, I forgot that it dipped like that, and I really like it, so I'm going to add it. Give your pieces character. Okay, so I need the shoulders to kind of come up this way, and then I'll probably only do the shoulders today so that they can dry, because let's talk about the structure of this for a second. When you have clay that's stacked up on itself in a straight wall like this, it's really structurally sound. Unless it's too tall and too wet, it'll flop over, but it's really strong this way. The second you curve it and you have nothing to support it here or here, this is called the shoulder of your pot. This is when it becomes really fragile. So if I were hand building this, I'm going to build up the shoulder of my pot first, and then let it set up, dry a bit, before I put the neck and the rim on, because this is going to be heavy weight sitting right here where there's nothing to support it. So we need this shoulder to be super strong. So we're going to do that today by just making a couple coils and building that up. Nothing annoys me more than having no workspace where you're working, right? You're trying to roll out this big thing and you have no space. Okay, got my coil. I'm gonna flatten it. This is the technique I taught you guys last week. I flatten it. You guys need to learn your terms. Coil, this is coil pinch, and that was slab. Now we're doing both techniques. We just slabbed up the body, right, the walls, and now we're coil pinching the shoulders and the neck. By the end of this class, I want you to learn how to use your clay terms. Okay. Now I'm going to take this wet coil and I'm going to attach it. And when I attach it, I don't just lay it on there, right? Like I really, one pinch at a time, I'm kind of like guiding it onto the rim. And then when I get to the corner here, I'm kind of pinching it so that it curves around. I'm going to cut it off. Don't forget to score this and score this. A little bit of water and close. Okay, so now I have a lot of clay right here. So go around with your fingertips and pinch. You really need to attach this well because you're attaching a really wet clay to clay that's much drier. I'm going around twice, and I'm also pinching that seam closed or attach those two pieces. And before I close this off, so I can't get my hand in there anymore, I'm going to go in with my finger and really seal that seam. This is the last time I'm going to see the inside of my pot. Okay, whenever I attach a coil, I like to go around and do a cross-hatching attachment. So I'll sweep in sort of a diagonal direction and pull that wet clay down just with my fingertip, and then I'll go back at the opposite direction. This is one of those techniques I've learned over the years, that if I do it every time, I never get a crack. It's the same thing as if I'm throwing and I run my finger along the inside of the base 6 times, I never get a crack. If I do this, I never get a crack. So these things are good to learn and experiment with. Okay, now I'm going to pinch it up into a curve, and I might need to do some darts. I have too much clay on the corner here, possibly. Or I could just maybe leave that corner slightly thicker. Let's see how it goes. Now I've almost got that complete shoulder. I think I might try to close this off and then cut the neck out. Okay, now I'm just going to go around and kind of analyze my wall, make sure I don't have any areas that are too thick. Pinching as I go, and then I'm going to take the paddle and just give it a nice form. This also smooths it out too when you do this. Counter pressure on the inside while I still can. This also helps with attaching because it compresses. And then my rib tool. Scrape that wet clay right into your slab. And this is how you combine techniques. Okay, so this is what I've got so far. So now this is kind of the shoulder. I could close this off today. I think it's strong enough that I could do that. So let's do that. Because next time we come back to it, we can put the neck on. Score this up, and now I just need one thick slab, or one thick coil right there. I've got just a few minutes to do this. I'm going to do it. Now, as we're nearing the end of class, you are taking a whip of your progress today. So you can see where you're at. And then next week, I'll probably, or maybe even Thursday, I'm going to pull you out individually and help you. Okay, so the wall of this should be the same thickness as your piece here. So you don't want to be attaching something heavier. Okay, score this up. I'll probably end up taking some of this off. Wet, wet.
Miss Greninger?
Yeah.
What are we going to be using to seal our bottles? Do we have to find something or make something?
I'm gonna have you make something or find something, one or the other.
So like we could use like a cork.
You could use a cork. You could ask your parents if they have any wine bottles. There, you might be able to steal a cork from that. You could make a clay cork, but the problem with that is that it could get stuck in there. But that might not be a bad thing. So we'll experiment with that. Okay, so now I've got this big slab of clay on there. I can't push too hard on this now because it's sealed and I can't put counter pressure on the inside. So I have to be really careful about pushing this in and caving it in. If it does cave in, I can show you how to fix it, but let's just try to avoid that. So I'm scraping, scraping, scraping. And now I'm going to have a sealed form, which is a nice thing to paddle on because there's trapped air in there that kind of holds the pressure. Okay, so I've sealed it, and now I'm going to do some paddling. This helps with attaching. Don't hit it too hard. Looking at the form from all sides, going for symmetry or asymmetry, whatever you're going for, just make sure you're going for something. Something so satisfying about closing a form like this. It's all hollow and you built it. Okay, I'm going to do a little scraping just to get rid of that texture, finger mark texture. It's a little bit caved in right here, so I could let it set up and add more clay to that spot as long as it's not too thick. Or I could cut into it and stick my finger in and pull it out, let it set up a little bit, and then add more clay later. There's ways of dealing with that. But this is the stage at which you really want to make sure that your form is what you want it to be, because this is when you can paddle on it. This is when you can change it. This is a giant bottle. Don't make your bottle any bigger than this. It's easy to let these forms get out of control in terms of size, believe me. Also, just always pay attention to your thickness of your clay. You don't want anything more than a ½ inch thick anywhere or it could explode. I could scrape away at this more later too, because that top piece is pretty thick. I think I want a little shoulder dip right here. I think the paddle is really my favorite tool. This is, thick enough that I could paddle it later. Scrape it later. Scrape it into more refined form. Dig around in your garage. Maybe you have a piece of wood in your garage for a paddle. A spoon also makes a kitchen spoon, also makes a great paddle. Or a good texturizer if you want some texture on there. I want you to try things you haven't tried yet with this project. Be bold. You're never going to know where your edges are if you never get to the edge. Okay, now I'm having fun because now it's starting to look like a fun, funky little figure. Kind of looks like an owl, doesn't it? Little eyes, boop, boop. All right, so we're done for today. In a couple minutes, make sure to take a picture of your progress, post it as a WIP. Even if you posted your workspace today, you have to post, just reply and post a picture of your progress. And I will take a picture of this so you guys can kind of see a better view of it, and I'll post the video. Do I have any questions? Okay, I'm gonna go wash my hands and take some photos of this and do exactly what you guys are doing. I'm gonna post my WIP. All right, guys, so now through probably the beginning of hybrid, I'm going to be asking you on a daily to post your workspace and post your WIPs. So knowing that, when class starts, be prepared to have your workspace ready to work and your pieces out. I realize this is the second period of the day, so maybe you hadn't set up yet by the start of class. So I will always give you a few minutes to do that. And you're going to be sharing your workspace with me on a daily. Any questions? All right, you guys, you are dismissed, and I will see you on Thursday.